I've been with the Eugene YMCA since May of 2018, and prior to that, I spent most of my career in Montana. In fact, I was born and raised in Montana, and I always joke that my family is like returning to the Pacific Northwest. For so many people, they're kind of now moving here, and we're seeing the impact on that in our communities. But my family's been out in this area for a long time. My great grandfather was a bricklayer in Seattle, helped rebuild Seattle after the fires in the 1890s. And my grandparents lived here in the 40s in Eugene when my grandfather was going to welding school, and then they went up and worked at McCord Field outside of Seattle during the war years. And so we're now kind of rediscovering the Pacific Northwest and have loved being here. It's been a unique time to be in Eugene and with the YMCA. I was talking with a coworker this morning. We were, just kind of shaking our heads and laughing. The YMCA officially got shut down due to the impacts of COVID in mid-March of last year. And we were shut down at two different points in 2020. And so in total, out of the past year, we were closed for about half that time. And really, you think about an industry where, like Steve mentioned, our goal is to bring lots of people together, to build connections, to build relationships. And then when people are here at the Y, they're often exercising and breathing heavily. And so, that kind of like the perfect storm for passing around COVID. And so we're grateful and excited to see the county moving down a risk level. That will allow us to serve quite a few more people. We've been able to operate for the past couple of weeks in a pretty modified way, but it was really heavily modified. We had a 27,000 square foot tennis center that could have really at 5 people in it at one time, and so now we'll see a more normal level of service starting next week. The Y has been serving the community during COVID in other ways. Even outside of COVID, we are the county's largest child care providers. We have child care services in all of the elementary schools in the Cottage Grove area, and so in the South Lane. We're in Bethel, and then we're in just about every elementary school in 4J. And so in total, we provide child care to around 23 different schools on any given day in a normal school year. And so when COVID started to impact our community and impact the schools, we shifted into our emergency child care mode. And so for the past year, we've been providing what would be called emergency child care. We've been part of the city and the county's emergency response unit, and we've been providing child care to frontline workers, medical workers, essential workers, and doing that, it looks very different than normal. We're in lots of churches today versus schools, and we're doing quite a bit of stuff here at the YMCA as well. And then we also took our exercise programs and we created a virtual platform where we could offer them to the community. And so it turned out that we were the first YMCA in America to launch a virtual membership tool. And today we're training Ys around the country on how to provide that service to the communities. And so we have lots of exercise classes and nutrition classes and other things that are now being offered virtually. And then we've also continued to try and evolve to meet needs in the community. So for example, last year when there were the forest fires, we opened up the Y and we're providing free access and showers to individuals who might need to have a shower, and we also are providing, and still providing to this day, free childcare to any family who lost their home in a fire. And so we understood that those families were already facing, you know, a lot of difficulty with the school year, and those kids were trying to work through remote learning, and then, you know, they were trying to take their education to the home, and then they lost their home. And so we've been providing, you know, free care to any one of those families who needs support. And so the Y has evolved and adjusted our services in the community in the past year, but we're still here, and we're still thriving and able to be as sustainable as possible. We, you know, we a lot, like a lot of organizations around the country, have really been supported by programs such as the SBA's Paycheck Protection Program funding. We also have worked with the statewide group of Ys to secure funding in support of emergency child care programs, and with Business Oregon in support of small businesses and those groups who are providing funding. And so I do often get a lot of questions from people saying, you know, is the Y surviving? Are you going to make it? And we say, yeah, we are going to make it. We're going to continue to serve the community. And so, you know, we've really evolved. But the other thing we've been doing during this time is we've also been focused on, you know, our work to build a new YMCA, and that's been a critical part of our work for a long time. The YMCA is Lane County's, it's one of Lane County's oldest nonprofits. We started on the campus at the University of Oregon in April of 1887. And we were on campus for quite a few years. And really the focus in our early years was on helping the students who were arriving find jobs in the community. And so we were kind of a job placement organization, and working with like the Chamber of Commerce and different employers. And I'll share that story with people, and they'll often have this vision of, you know, they'll think, well, there's a lot of groups who are on the university's campus, and the university is a big entity. But when we started, there were about 250 kids on campus. And so it was, you know, very, very small. And so a lot of focus on employment, a lot of focus on education. And then over the years, we adjusted and evolved. And during World War I and World War II, we spent a lot of time helping returning troops get access to jobs and education programs. We also helped a lot get access to programs with what today you might talk about as like associated with PTSD and counseling and supportive services dealing with the trauma of coming back from the wars. And then in 1916, we also had a different evolution in our Y's work. We built what was at the time a YMCA on a train car, and we would go out to lumber camps, and we would provide education programs and a place where the timber workers could relax and play games and read books in the YMCA train car. Eventually, the board of the YMCA determined that they needed not just a location on campus, but they needed the location downtown. And so they built the Y that it was on Willamette, and it was kind of where the bus depot is today downtown. And it's funny, if you go back and you read through the archives of the Y, they talked about when they built it, their focus was to help the high school kiddos who were, you know, kind of getting on the wrong side of the law and you know, getting into some mischief, and they said they were being enticed by the white lights of the city. And so we went in and we had places for them to come and, you know, a positive environment to hang out. And so we did that for several years until eventually there were some key community leaders who stepped up and they said, you know, we've had a YMCA around for a long time, but we need to see it grow the work that it's doing. And we also had not just a group of YMCA leaders who were focused on, at the time, the Y really did align with what the acronym stands for. We were focused on serving young Christian men. And then there was also the YWCA that was focused on serving young Christian women. And so in the early 50s, the YWCA and the YMCA leaders, they came together to do fundraising to build this building that we have today on Patterson Street. And it was built in 1955. Eventually, the two groups merged and it just became known as the YMCA. And of course, today we don't just serve young Christian men. You know, we serve lots of different ages and backgrounds of people. And so our Y has been in this building since the mid 50s, and this building has served us well, but it's also running into, you know, a pretty catastrophic level of age and condition. In fact, just the other day, our facility guy had me with a flashlight, knee pads, and we had climbed behind the pool in our basement, and you can see where the walls of the pool are starting to break and leak water on the back sides. And we also have rooms where we try and do classes that have, you know, stairs, and there's no elevator, and we have pretty old plumbing and electrical and roofs and all kinds of challenges with this building. And so the vision has been to build a state-of-the-art new facility in town. The new Y will be a 70,000 square foot facility. The current building is a little under 50,000 square feet. And are you okay if I share my screen? Can I show you some of the images of the new Y?
Sure, that'd be great.
All right. So I'll share with you our capital campaign brochure. This is something we share a lot in the community. So part of this brochure, I can email you, Steve, after if you would like, and you can pass it around if you'd like. We talk about our history and starting in the 1880s, and then kind of go through some of the iterations of stuff I just mentioned today. And we also, here in the brochure, we have a couple testimonials. So Sabrina Parsons, she is our campaign chair, and she's the CEO of Palo Alto Software here in town. Part of what we also celebrate in our campaign brochure is the work that we're doing in all of the schools that I mentioned. And so we have programs throughout the Eugene area and the Cottage Grove area, and work closely with the school districts. And we really want to focus on how the new Y will help us expand programming for children. And so I'll talk to that point in just a little bit, but today we're serving over 700 kiddos in our programs. And then we also have a note on here about how we, as an organization, are serving individuals that have different mobility challenges and constraints, and how the new Y will help us in that area. So this is Larry. He's been a longtime Y member, and he has a wheelchair he exercises in, and so he's a great example of the individuals we serve that can't use parts of our current building because we don't have access to spaces that are accessible. And this is Mary Kingston, who was the CEO of Peace Health. You probably know that she just actually had to resign, had some family emergencies. But our Y works closely with the medical community. We are an organization that, YMCA in America, that has tried to innovate around health. And so we were one of the first 10 Ys in the country to launch a diabetes prevention program. We were the first Y in Oregon to launch a cancer survivors program. And we have programs today around Alzheimer's or not Alzheimer's, but arthritis and balance, and helping individuals that are dealing with some of those challenges. So down here, what I want to show you is this is kind of a layout of the first floor of the new Y, and I'll try and zoom in on that to make sure it's as viewable as possible. So we have a much larger aquatic center than we currently have. The current Y has a 4-lane lap pool. The new Y will have a 6-lane lap pool, and it'll allow us to, not just help people who are looking to swim, but it'll allow us to do, hundreds of more swim lessons in a given year, and really expand our aquatics exercise programs. We'll also have a warm water therapy pool. We have a lot of requests for individuals who are looking to, who are rehabbing from a surgery, or who might have joint pains and are looking for a gentle place to exercise without the pounding of like a treadmill or some other type of exercise equipment. So this is the first floor of the Y. We also have a community room that will have a teaching kitchen. And so we'll be able to have nutrition classes and provide education to the community on healthy meal preparation. We have on the southern side of the Y a lot of spaces focused on children and youth. So we'll have 2 preschools that each serve 20 children. These will replace the preschools we have at our current building. And then these spaces on this other area, so the play care rooms will be for parents to drop their children off when they're going out to exercise, and they need a safe place for their kids to be cared for. These spaces down here are really a dynamic and kind of fluid part of the new Y. So Fun Club will be a space where we can take after school youth and bring them in and do mentoring, academic tutoring, and education support programs. This Academic Achievement Center is really a multi-generation area where we might have like a sewing class in there or a knitting class. We'll also have equipment in there to do like a coding or a computer class, and we'll have art and craft, and we'll even have some music classes that will take place in that space. And oh shoot, okay, here it is. The second floor of the Y will have 3 exercise rooms, one that's focused on yoga, and then 2 that have other levels of just different classes and programs. The ability to gather a group for exercise class is really the most critical things that we can provide the community, because that introduces not just a place to exercise and build muscles, but it's also a place to build relationships. And then this wellness area. This is going to be where we have like the treadmills and the exercise bikes and the equipment such as that. This space here, this wellness area, is about 3 times larger than this space type of equipment. And in fact, in our current Y, where we have our treadmills and weights, it was never designed for that. When the YWCA and the YMCA built it in the 50s, it was actually an indoor pistol shooting gallery. And so never really designed for what it's doing today, but this space will be intentionally designed. It'll have a southern wall of windows with beautiful views of Spencer Butte and the southern end of Eugene. And these spaces are all fully accessible. We have elevator banks and the ability for people of any background to come. These wellness offices will be a space, and this multi-purpose room here, where we really look to expand our partnerships with the medical community to offer new programming around health. So we'll continue to offer our diabetes program, our cancer program, our arthritis program, but we want to build on that and start offering programs around other illnesses such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And so we want to have classroom space, education space, and bring on more staff that can help expand that. We'll have a spin room, a cycle room. That is something we currently don't have that a lot of people have interest in. And then this will actually be a rooftop outdoor exercise area where, again, we'll have just great views of Spencer Butte and be able to exercise outdoors for those people who are interested in that. And then we'll have an indoor walking track. So in addition to being the county's largest child care provider, we are also one of the largest senior care providers in the community. And about 25% of Y members are over the age of 70. And we have a lot of seniors that we work with who come to the Y because their health insurance programs pay for their membership. And so one of the requests that we often get pretty frequently is looking for a safe place to walk when it's raining out or it's inclement weather. And so this will be a great space on this indoor track. It'll also be a space for people if they're recovering from a surgery or like a joint injury, that they'll have a very stable, safe place that they can walk and exercise there. The rest of this brochure, we talk about the total cost. So the total cost of the project is a $42 million campaign, and a significant amount of this is state funding. I'll come back to that in just a little bit. But the way it breaks out is about almost 37 million is for the design and the construction. Then we are purchasing the land from 4J for 2.8 million. And then we have the cost of fundraising and the management and like our owner's rep and others who are involved with the project. Today we have, this is kind of the funding plan for the new Y. We had a remarkable lead gift from Bill and Michelle Service. Bill, he grew up coming to the Y. He's a Eugene native, went to South Eugene High School and was a part of the Y for a long time. And then he joined the board a few years ago and really just was grateful for the impact of the Y on his life. So he and his wife have made a $4 million commitment to the project. They're not highly known philanthropists in the community. In fact, Bill has told me before that his largest gift prior to this was $25,000. And so it just really shows his level of engagement on it. We also have a major gifts campaign that we're actively working on. It's been really inspiring to see the major philanthropists and donors in our community step forward. Families such as the Chambers family, the Jaquas, Justina's, Betty Soaring have been remarkable parts of our Y. And then foundations and grants. This is an area where we've been working with, for example, Peace Health and other foundations and grants that would go in there, such as the Murdoch Charitable Trust. They're a large regional funder that is supporting the project. And then, of course, in 2019, we received $15 million in state funding through the lottery bond program. With COVID's impact to the gaming industry, so many locations were shut down that they weren't able to sell the bonds in their planned for time frame, which was April of 21. And so now we're working with the legislators again to re-secure this funding and have the bonds sold as quickly as possible. Our goal is to have the rest of our funding in place and to be at this $1 million community phase by the fall of 21. And so we're trying hard to work towards that timeline. This is just a little bit more the story about Bill and Michelle. And then we have some support from Chad Barzak, CEO of IDX, and his support of the project. The last part of the project lists our capital campaign, our cabinet, and our board. And so these are leaders on the project. The cabinet helps with the fundraising, and of course, the board is the head of the Y. So you'll probably recognize several of these names in the community. People such as Bob Ballin, Jerry Gatos. I think probably everybody in town knows Jerry. Guy Justice, who he's been in the town and philanthropic community in a lot of ways, and of course the Korth family and Dan Williams with the university. So several individuals that I'm sure that you're familiar with. I'll stop that there, and I've talked for quite a bit there, and so I'll pause there and just see what are some of the questions you might have, and then there's a few more details that I can talk to, and whether you have questions about COVID and our current work or questions about the work to build the new Y.
Thank you. That was great. Does anybody have any questions? Well, I do have a question while you guys are thinking of one, maybe. Are the Ys throughout the nation, or maybe even around the world, are they interconnected in any way, or is each individual community a standalone entity?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I just had to really, work hard with the SBA on that question. So the YMCA is a movement started in London, England in 1844. We started with the vision of helping, youth who are kind of going wayward during the Industrial Revolution there, and giving them a wholesome place to hang out and recreate. And so today, the YMCA as a movement it's around the world. There's a global YMCA network. In America, there is a national headquarters office in Chicago, and that's where they call YUSA. But each local Y is independent, and so we have what is called a federated model, where we're part of this national group, but they're locally independent, locally governed by their board, and they have their own strategic priorities, their own areas of focus and emphasis, and so each Y can kind of be their own. What the national office does is they impose basically membership standards that in order to have the logo and call yourself a Y, you have to do certain things. And so, for example, we have to do sexual abuse, sexual offender screenings on all of our members to make sure that nobody that's coming into the Y is a sexual offender. We have to do sexual abuse prevention training with all of our staff. We have to do aquatic safety training, and there's about 6 other standards, but that's how they impose kind of their guidelines for us.
Well, thank you. Anybody else have a question?
I do.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah, does this project include natural gas or just electricity?
Yeah, this project is, and that's a great question. In fact, I'm glad you went down that path. So it's natural gas and electric, but it's being designed in a unique way because, so one of the things that happened is our fundraising's actually been going really pretty well. And then right towards the beginning of COVID, we we were finalizing the construction drawings. And so COVID hit and we kind of took a stand down there. We paused for a little bit to see the impact. And what we really saw is as COVID hit, different community groups and leaders, the Chamber of Commerce, United Way, different groups, they really came to the Y looking for like, what can you do to help, with the wildfire victims or with the kids that are out of school, and how can you help the community? And so we had kind of this tsunami of requests for help. And at the same time, we saw that when the Y was closed down, we lost significant revenue. And so since COVID impacted the Y, we've lost probably around $2 million in typical revenue streams. We've made up for that by providing other services and then having federal and state dollars come in support of those services. And so as we saw that, one of the things the board said is, wow, when there's a disaster and emergency, the community needs the Y. And when the Y gets shut down, we lose our typical revenue models. So how do we approach the next 100 years and learn from COVID? And so one of the things the board did is they said, it's very likely, or it's highly likely, that in the next 100 years, there will be a seismic level event through the Cascadia Fault that will be catastrophic in the Pacific Northwest and potentially for our community. And so what they did is they went back into the design of the Y and they took it up to the highest seismic standards. So it's designed to the standards like a hospital, where it's usable immediately after an event. And so in doing that, we more steel, more engineering, more structural components. And one of the reasons we did that is because we knew if there was an emergency, people wouldn't be looking for treadmills and exercise bikes. Rather, we would need a triage center, a staging area, and maybe even a shelter where we could use our locker rooms. We'll have multiple kitchens at the new Y, and we can feed and shelter the community for months or longer if needed. And so that's a good question, Nick, because part of it is the new Y is also designed to fully run independently off a generator. And so there's going to be a huge generator that's attached to the Y that it'll run off diesel, because if natural gas lines ruptured into it, that would then shut it down. And so it'll run independently on diesel that we can truck in and have it continue to serve the community.
As kind of a follow-up to that, Brian, is there going to be a helicopter pad, like to be able to take people from the hospital from the Y to the hospital and that kind of thing?
That's a great question. We're not intentionally building one, but I'm sure we would cordon off part of the parking lot for that. That's one of the benefits of the new Y versus the current Y is the current Y has about 8 parking spots. The new one will have almost 300. So much easier to get to and utilize. The other thing, and this is still kind of in its early phases, but I know eWeb is looking to put in like an emergency water well right there on property next to the Y, so that we could have have access to that as well. One of the things that's been interesting is a lot of people think new things in the community are already built to those seismic standards, but the new Y would be one of the few places in town built to that highest level. Even like the Roosevelt Middle School built right next door, which is pretty new, that's at a seismic level. I think it's 3. The highest level is 4. And so there'll be lots of structures that if it's a truly catastrophic event, will not have been, they might not be usable immediately afterwards.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Brian. I assume you'll be selling your existing facility once you have a new facility, but I'm guessing, and I think I've read something about the tennis facility will not be moving, or you won't be incorporating that. Can you refresh my memory on that as well?
Yeah, that's a great question there as well. So kind of the easiest way, I'll share my screen here again. This is often the I often describe this. So this is I'll pull in up here. This is the Y property, and we can see the tennis center here on the southern end of the property, the parking lot that we use, and then the new Y. And so we have had appraised test potentially an acre somewhere up in this section of property towards the construction cost if it be. That appraised at about 1.2 if it was zoned R2. But you know, as the old saying goes, you know, they're not building any more land, and so we also know how precious the land can be. And so the desire and the hope for the board would be that we could keep the land if possible. This building here has quite a few problems with roof, plumbing, electrical. It would be really, really challenging to retrofit it for something. So we hope to be able to start in the future another capital campaign that would allow us to expand the tennis center. It currently has 4 courts. We'd like to be able to put on an additional 2 to 4 that would take it like up in this area somewhere, and then put some parking up here. Tennis is one of our fastest growing, most in-demand programs. And we also have a huge demand for our pickleball efforts. And so that would be a much, much smaller project. Those buildings are, you know, far more affordable than what we're trying to build. So that's kind of our hope, but we'll see if the donors and the community have interest in that.
I really am partial to tennis because I used to play a lot when I was in college, and but tennis is kind of a hard thing because it takes a lot of ground, and you only serve, you know, 2 or, you know, like 4 people even in doubles. I mean, you're not, it burns up a lot of space to serve a few people. Is there are there any plans to put it out where not in an area that's as high valued that might go further?
Yeah, those are definite questions the board will look at as well, because this really represents just building the first new Y that we're looking at. Ultimately, what we'd like to build is another Y as well, like in the North Eugene, Bethel area or something like that. So there could be visions or plans with something like that out there. We also do get quite a few requests for housing affordable housing in that area and components like that. And so I laugh and I tell the board, I said, someday we'll have to have some pretty strategic conversations about the land and the real estate there, because it definitely is a pretty high value piece of property because of proximity to the high school and the university. Those are great questions.
This is Dick. Can you do a land lease and then not sell the property and have them develop it?
I've had a commercial agent talk with me about that as well. Yeah, I haven't explored it very far, but I definitely have had some inquiries about it.
Because see, that would be an income stream for you, which you're going to find you're going to need, right?
Yeah, having that passive income would be really nice.
So just food for thought.
Yeah. That's, kind of to that point, that's one of the things we really hope with the new Y is our pro formas show that the new Y is likely to serve thousands of more people than the current Y. In the Y, we don't turn anybody away if they have an inability to pay for our programs. And so we provide lots of financial assistance each year, about $500,000 a year, to help people access the programs. And one of the things we hope to do is have the new Y generate significantly more revenue. And then we'd like to expand after school programming and childcare programming into communities such as Oak Ridge and Florence, Benita, other parts of Lane County. And so there's, like a less than 20, but there's a multi-year vision of expanding the impact in the community, not just building the new Y. The new Y is just kind of a thing. It doesn't really capture our vision to help address education and disease and those type of things.
Well, this has been one of the quickest hours that has gone by in a long time. It's already 1 o'clock, and we could do one more question if it's a quickie. Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask? Because I feel like we've just scratched the surface. Anybody got I just for my own, I don't understand. Did the Y used to be where, like, if I was a member of the Y here, my Y membership, like if I traveled to I don't know, Los Angeles, that I could go into the Y there? Did it ever used to do that, or is it that way now, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. It used to be your membership at one Y was only at that Y, and in 2019 they changed it so that a membership at one Y allows you to go to any other Y in the country.
Wow. I did not know that. So, well, unfortunately, Brian, this is just zipped by as usual. It's been terrifically informative, and you never really said, when do you think the building will be usable for at least the bottom part? Do you have any ideas?
We hope. We don't have that specifically nailed down because it's going to depend on when the state would sell the lottery bonds. That's a really big component driving the timeline right now. What I can say is we've done our part to really be ready. The construction drawings are 100% complete. We're at the point where we can submit for a building permit. So we need to have that state part nailed down, but a lot of other parts and pieces are coming together.